back out of the semi. He was so proud. Oh, that was one of the things that he probably couldn't do with his son when he was little. Dad used to come down every year, the first day of school, and he would wave as the boys got onto the bus, and he would give them a wave. And he would say, "Have a good day at school." And after that, he said, "I'll be waiting for you when you get home." And we'd go back out in the field to farm. He watched over them each and every day. Oh, he forgot his glasses.
As our children grew and started to help out on the farm, Dad's words and wisdom was more pronounced with every grandson encountered. He lectured them on safety, how important that was, especially on a farm. He taught them how to laugh at the silliest things. Our sons were having an argument one day, and my son put his hand by his side and shook it to say, "That's enough. I'm done fighting." And Dad laughed so hard I thought he was going to split his pants open. Well, from that day forward, that was Grandpa's special wave to our children. When he saw them, he would just give them that wave, and they knew what it meant. That's it. The last day Dad was coherent, Tony and Trish house, our sons gathered around him. This was one of the good nights that Dad had had. We liked to spend the evening with Dad because he had sundowners. He was more alert at night, and this was our special time together. Well, that night, we weren't really sure if he knew who was there or not, but Zach gave him that wave, and he returned the gesture right away. So he knew that we were there with him. There are many stories that have been told to all of us about Dad's experiences in life. And we all heard them several times through our lives, and each time we laughed just as hard as the first time we heard them. Lyle loved life, and the best thing he could give someone was his laughter. Life itself is hard, but if you don't have laughter, then you have nothing. As time went on, Dad could no longer climb into the combine or the tractor. It must have been the hardest time for him. But he showed us that it was also the proudest that he could watch all of us work on the farm. Watching us, we followed in his well-trained footsteps. Dad left huge shoes to fill for our boys, and they will do their best to fill them. As a grandfather, he gave our children so much wisdom, let alone how to be respectful, honest, and love. You hardly ever spoke the words, but your actions showed volumes of the love that you had for all of us. Thanks, Dad. Please continue to watch over us, as you'll be missed forever and loved. May you rest in peace. Thank you.
Zach, if you have words to share, come on up. You are welcome to do so.
Hello, everybody. I have so many memories of my grandpa and I. Unfortunately, I can't remember all of them from my younger age. But about 6 years ago, at a time when my grandpa was starting to slow down, and my dad was busier than one man probably should be, I was working in Bay City. Nate was going to college. Garrett had not quite graduated, and Wade had just started high school. So I decided to quit my job to come home and do what I could to help out on the farm. These were special years to be working side by side with my grandpa. They may not have been the prettiest or most enjoyable memories all the time, but that definitely does not mean that they were not special. From truck rides to parts stores, or helping to deliver seed, or moving equipment from field to field, to picking up trash left in the ditch from litterers. Or what seemed like a weekly ride to go down to the bottom of people's ditches in front of their fields and completely remove teasel weeds because they were a bad weed. And of course, the annual dreaded speech from my grandpa. He would go, "Zachary, a really young boy once told his grandma and grandpa that he would always trim those shrubs around the front of the house." Well, I just wanted to let you know that they are ready. But he did not make me do this alone. He would hold the extension cord from snagging and coming unplugged, or he would hold the ladder when I had to go up and get the really tall ones. And even in his most recent years, when he could not get himself into the tractors or combine anymore, he would still sit in his truck and watch us in the field and was available to bring us whatever we need, whether it was fuel, parts, seed, or most often a meal or snack, but he never left us alone. I'm sure I don't need to tell or to express to anyone here how great of a man my grandpa was, because I know you already know. I am just so glad I got the pleasure of being his grandson.
As I shared 15 minutes for sharing from the rest of you, you are welcome to come forward and share from the pulpit so everybody will hear you. I open that time to you now. If those of you who would like to share are welcome to come forward.
Trying to make it through. My whole life, I spent with Lyle. 53 years ago, he gave me a job. As of a month ago, I told him someday I was going to quit. Loved him, and for 53 years, I worked for him. When I was a young boy at 5 years old, he was cutting my hair, so I owned the family my whole life. And I appreciate Lyle for the greatest man besides my dad that I ever knew. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
We worship amazing God. We know that is when God puts special people in our lives, like Lyle and Charlie who were here. I come to know the family in the mid-70s. I had the opportunity to have a courtship with their lovely daughter Lori. But when the courtship didn't work out, Lyle and Charlene never let me out of their lives. Their friendship's always been strong. I was married a few years later and become unemployed after building a brand new home. Out of work, need a job. So I went to see Lyle and Charlene. I started the next day. If it wasn't for Lyle and Charlene, I probably would have lost my home. For the next 2.5 years, they filled my freezer with meat every year, and they provided me with work. And a few years later, in my life, I had some children, my wife and I, and had a son that got in a lot of trouble with the law. In the middle of a snowstorm, Lyle drove to my house, handed me a card, a letter in it, from him and Charlene. The card and the letter was so encouraging. Lyle was not a man of money, not a man of personal things, but he was a man of faith, a man of God. And one thing, God puts special people in our lives, and sometimes we don't recognize it. But what Lyle taught me is when someone's down and out, and you can help them in any particular way, whether it be with your hands, financially, or material things, you need to do that. And that's what I really respect Lyle for. Lyle never cut my hair. You know, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on the cross for our sins, the sins of the world. He didn't send us a text message, an email, or leave a message on our phone. And Lyle, the man of God, how he walked through life, touching my life and my wife's life, and how he, no matter what happens, the family has never let my wife and I out of their lives, and I'm truly grateful for that. Thank you.
Friends. What are friends? Today, I found out that Lyle's friend has been here for 91 years. He's Charlene's friend. We're all his friends. And all I want to say is, Lyle, thanks for being our friend.
My name is Phyllis Curtis. I was Phyllis McCroner. My sisters and I had a wonderful time having a little brother. Some of my friends have said, wasn't it awful? Wasn't he the prince? We just said, well, we just thought he was cute. He's been a wonderful brother to us and a wonderful uncle to our families. Had our kids on the farm. My son Ted thinks he was half Lyle's. He likes to be on the farm. I'm grateful to Lyle and his children, Charlene, for being a wonderful support they've been to all of us. He's a good man.
I'm Jerry Paulson. My husband Dennis was pastor here for just 2 years. But the relationship we developed with Lyle and Charlene has been precious to us and stronger than so many places we've been for much longer. He was a wonderful, wonderful influence on our 3 daughters. And I'm just so very thankful that we were here those 2 years to get to know them. And I love you so much, Charlene. And I know that he's waiting for you now. But I also know that he and Dennis are probably getting into all kinds of mischief right now.
I'm Dale Whitmore. I work with Lyle a lot on the seed corner. You up here and lose it, I guess, but I spent a lot of time with Lyle. The seed corn thing was right up his alley because he got to go out and talk, and it helped me meet a lot of people too in my life. A couple of stories that were pretty amazing to me was, he was talking about one time raking hay and he could hear bullets flying over his head, and he says, So we got home, he got this hat on, he says, yeah, I was telling you a story about the bullets flying over my head. Well, he had this hat on, and he took it off, and he got home ready to pay it with a bullet hole right through the top of his hat. And, I don't know, just those kind of things. And she mentioned that George Bush was actually on the farm after the flood. Well, Lyle was the first one to have a Jake's hat and jacket on both, the president or the vice president at that time, and Bill Schuette. So he says, those pioneer guys, they like to take that one, so. But another story we had, and many of you have probably heard some of these stories 14 times if you spent much time with Lyle, but another story we had, we were on a farm visiting, trying to sell seed corn, and this person that was a hired hand for the farm at one time come up, and he was strange. And you could look in his eyes, and there was some things weren't right. And when Lyle and I got back in the truck, I said, and Lyle said to me, he says, you know, that guy's going to be in prison sometime because that guy's just not all there. Well, it wasn't 4 days later, the guy was in the paper, busted by the police and went to prison for doing bad things. So Lyle was a pretty good judge of character. But I appreciate the time that I had with him. I got to meet his family. I got to meet a lot of good people along the way, so I appreciate it. Thanks.
I have been very blessed. I met Lyle in this building. And Lyle had a way of getting you to do things and made you feel good that you were doing them. And then, of course, hindsight, you would go, well, that little stinker. He talked me into that like that was my idea. But I absolutely love Lyle. He sat right over there. And he talked me into being a liturgist, and I've been doing it ever since then. But whenever I was up here and I'm a liturgist, I could look over and see how proud he was that I was willing to answer the call of God to be a part of this congregation and to do part of the work in this congregation. And one of the best stories I have about him, and he doesn't even, I'm sure he didn't even know this, but as generations come, and they pass through the church, and you hand off the work of the church, sometimes that's a hard transition. But Lyle handed it off with such grace. And anytime you needed something, if you were in the middle of it and you weren't sure what to do, he would very quietly and gently point you in the right direction and give you advice. But he wasn't haughty about it. There was no ego there. He just said, this is what God wants us to do. And I just praise him because that is a man of integrity, and that Lyle was just such a man of love. And as I raised my children in this church, they knew they were loved by him. And you would think he was their grandpa. Anytime they would get up to do something, he was their grandpa. And that is just such a blessing for all of us. And of course, my church mom. What a great couple, what a great example of what marriage looks like, and putting God first and then each other. So I praise God for Lyle and his life, and that we got to share it with him.
Hello, I'm Ross. I'd like to say I knew Lyle well, and I had a lot of stories to tell about Lyle, but I really don't. But I recognized him, as I'm sure you people do, for who he was. That's a gift. Lyle was the Lord's farmer. Lyle had a way of planting a seed, nurturing that seed, letting it grow. Some other person once said, you can spend a lifetime in the garage, but it doesn't make you a cop. Lyle was a Christian, and he shared his love, and he shared the Lord wherever he went. In a very powerful, but also, I think, a very loving way. Lyle could listen, and Lyle listened, and he nurtured that seed to become a powerful tree. Everybody in this congregation, I'm sure, as we just heard, how Lyle did that. And he did it unselfishly and gave of himself. I was kind of leery about saying something because I don't have the story, but like I said, I think it's important to recognize Lyle for who he was and how he lived his life. Thank you.
I think Ross and Deanna just took the words that I was going to summarize that whole period with of sharing. But I think Greg also lifted the 4 F's: faith, family, farming, and friends. And you all today are a testimony of that. In my time of getting to know Lyle, my experience has also been that of Deanna's. He welcomed me with open arms, and even was cracking jokes in the hospital last December when it was uncertain as to what was going to happen. Even after the day after the biopsy, I walked in with a coffee cup, and he cracked a joke about what was in my coffee cup, full of tea, of course, and nothing else. But he wanted to wiggle something in there. And even in these last few weeks, walking in the hospital, especially in the first few days after he had been admitted, he just kept saying, "I want to go home, I want to go home." And I didn't hear home to the farm, I heard home to God. His faith spoke so clearly of who he was and who God made him to be. This section over here is going to be empty for a little while, and it will be filled with another faithful servant in due time. I'm thankful for his generosity to the congregation in building up leaders in his family, his children and grandchildren and siblings and nieces and nephews. It's a testimony to who he was, who he valued his faith in God to be, and how he lived his life as sharing God's love. His love, he loved because he first loved us. That love came from God, and he so generously gave it. I don't think there are any truer words to say about Lyle Cormier than that. And with that, I invite Walt Benny to come forward on Sunday as I met with the family. Come on up, Lyle. Walt. As I walked over, we entered over to the funeral home on Sunday, Charlene came in and said, "You won't believe this, Kayla." I said, "What's that?" She said, "He wrote his own sermon." She said, "So you're off the hook." And I said, "Well, I don't think there's any truer way for us to celebrate his life." Lyle was so cherished in this congregation. He loved this congregation with all his heart, and he loved God. And he loved this congregation and this church because of his faith in God. You'll hear that in his reflection that Walt shares as he gets the final words here today, or so he thinks. But be blessed by them, friends. It truly is a testimony of his life and faith and love for all of you and for God.
I was hoping the story would continue for a couple more hours. Now it's my turn, and I get to share Lyle's farewell with you. To the people who attend the service of my passing, cry not for me as I pass this earthly home, for I have seen many yesterdays. I love today, and I do not fear tomorrow. I have experienced all the joys of life while avoiding most of the tragedies that befell so many people. Somewhere in the Bible there is a reference to a lifetime being 70 years. That adds up to 25,567 days. Most of these days have been pleasant and rewarding. with a few bad times to remind me that diligence and perseverance are required to make a difference. My motto has been, why spend part of life being miserable? All in all, life has been very good. Possibly the greatest asset has been having God-fearing parents and wonderful siblings, not to mention the love of a very good woman. I'm very proud of my 5 children who have provided me with many years of enjoyment. It has been said that the reward for living a long life is having grandchildren. They are so much fun that I wish I had had them first. I hope that everyone has the pleasure of listening to a small child tell their experiences. Their innocent minds hold great wisdom. I also hope that everyone can experience the ultimate compliment of being asked, Grandpa, would you care to play in the sandbox with me? If you get the invitation to play, do not let it pass. A life would not be complete without the companionship of a good dog. It has been my pleasure to have had 3 such dogs over a period of 30 years. Smokey was the first, then her son Duffy, and then his son Duke. All 3 were excellent animals that could almost talk. They were dependable, protective, and a source of great enjoyment. I was indeed fortunate to have had them near. One of the most enjoyable and rewarding benefits of life is time spent serving the church of choice. My earliest memories are of attending the Freeland Methodist Church at the corner of Freeland Road and First Street. I can remember the Sunday school superintendent, Frank Pollard, the primary department leader, Mrs. Bertha Delaney, and my Sunday school teacher, Leona May Lance, with whom I fell in love. Many changes have occurred during the passing years, and now we have a magnificent structure for all to enjoy for the next 100 years. We have much to give thanks for the foresight of those responsible for the planning and the completion of such a beautiful place to meet and worship. Over the years, there have been many people that have made favorable impressions on the lives of a great many people. They are the ones that did things for others without ever expecting anything in return. Examples of these acts would fill pages, and I would probably leave out a few, so I will not try to list them. Great will be the rewards in heaven for those that labor in love for others. My belief in God comes from observations of things in nature that could never have happened by accident. Life itself starts from a single cell of Eden that divides upon itself so rapidly that in less than 300 days, a complete human is accompanied with all systems present and functioning. It is a miracle. All other species are made in the image of their parents. Each species is dependent on other species for life support, and they in turn depend on plants for substance. Humans depend on plants for life-giving oxygen, and we give back carbon dioxide that plants require. All of these lives are intertwined, with each person helping others and receiving help back. How can anyone not believe that there is a supreme being behind the entire system? I stand in the courage of those ancestors who braved unthinkable hardships to make things better for those generations that follow. Think of how someone today will start out into the wilderness with a few hand tools and oxen and a wagon to try and make a life in a hostile place. We should all give thanks to those brave folks who come to the place near the Tittabawassee River to establish a town called Freeland. When I plant a seed in the ground, or see the leaves on a maple tree, or help a newborn calf to stand and nurse at its mother's side, or receive a kiss from a puppy, I marvel at what his hand has wrought. I marvel at the seasons of the year, and the passing of the planets in the sky, and the miracle of the energy of the sun, and the life-giving rain that seems to fall everywhere when it is needed. I marvel at the spinning of the planet Earth as it crosses night and day, and the oblong orbit around the sun, tilting to make the sun's rays accomplish the heat of summer and the cold of winter. Earlier I said that I don't fear tomorrow, and that is due to my belief in God. I believe that there is a heaven, and that it is what makes life here on earth so sweet. I feel sorry for those that have no faith, for who knows where they will end. I prefer to think on the positive side. As my case matures, I find it easier to accept the natural passage of one generation to the next, as has been the case forever. As time passes, I find comfort and acceptance in the word of the hymn, when peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrows like sea billows roll, whenever my lot thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. Those who know me well will understand that I like to have the last word. And that word is farewell, farewell, my friends.
One of the hymns that Lyle wanted to sing today, all of the hymns that we're singing today are songs that he wanted to sing. And some of the songs that you heard as you came in are also songs that he wanted to sing, but in this space of time and use of this our time together today, we decided to put some at the beginning or at the end as a result. So as you listen, as you process out, appreciate that those hymns came from him today as well. But the next one is a special one in the life of the family and for Lyle as well, and it is America the Beautiful, number 696. Please turn and unite your voices together.
Thank
Would you join with me in a word of prayer? God of us all, your love never ends. When all else fails, you still are God. We pray to you for one another in our need and for all anywhere who mourn with us this day. To those who doubt, give light. To those who are weak, strength. To all who have sinned, mercy. To all who sorrow, your peace. Keep true in us the love with which we hold one another. In all our ways we trust you, and to you with your church on earth and in heaven we offer honor and glory now and forever. O God, all that you have given to us is yours, as first you gave Lyle Lacronier to us, now we give Lyle back to you. Receive Lyle into the arms of your mercy. Raise Lyle up with all your people. Receive us also, and raise us into new life. Help us so to love and serve you in this world that we may enter into your joy in the world to come. Into your hands, O merciful Savior, we commend your servant, Lyle Howard Lacronier. Acknowledge, we humbly beseech you, a sheep of your own fold, a lamb of your own flock, a sinner of your own redeeming. Receive Lyle into the arms of your mercy, into the blessed rest of everlasting peace, and into the glorious company of the saints of light. Creator and provider God, at this time of all times, we need to thank you for the precious gift of life. We thank you for health and for the skill and compassion of those who care for us when our health falters and fails. We thank you for home and for the roof over our heads and the bed where we stretch out to renew our strength and sleep. And for loved ones who make that roof and that bed and all the rest into a true home. And we thank you for hope. Hope for the pursuit of the next goal when one goal has been reached. Hope for the recovery and a fresh start when a goal has eluded us. Hope at last when all hope seems lost, except for the one shining hope set before us in your raising our Lord Jesus from death. With that hope, we thank you for your Son, Jesus, who knew our griefs, who died our death and rose for our sake, and who lives and prays for us. And as he taught us, so we now pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. This time I invite you to rise for our final hymn together, Because He Lives, found on page 364 in your hymn.